All right. Welcome to Beyond the Whistle, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes and inside the world of basketball through the voices of coaches who've lived it. From their playing days to the coaching philosophies, from building team chemistry to shaping the future of the game. We go past the X's and O's, dive into the lessons, the challenges, and moments that define coaching. This is Beyond the Whistle. I'd like to start off by welcoming my guest today, great friend of mine, one of my best men in my wedding, roll dog for several seasons when we were roaming the world overseas, Larry Davis. Larry, his background is pretty significant. Proud South Carolina alum. I'm more proud of you because you are a North Carolina. I'm gonna give you an alum for that too because you went through the trenches there. So Larry played at South Carolina, graduated in 1993, correctly? Is that right? No, 94.
Graduated graduated from high school or college? College, I graduated in '97.
I think high school was, my bad. 97 from South Carolina, but you started your career off as a high level recruit, the best recruit out of the state of South Carolina in high school, and you ended up getting a scholarship offer and played your first couple of years at the University of North Carolina, where you were honored to have been able to play and compete for a national championship, win a national championship with a roster of a bunch of NBA guys and just guys who are just very, very well-rounded, good guys, man. I've had a pleasure of meeting a bunch of them because of you, just kind of just following you, trailing your coattails and so on and so forth. But I know you are immensely proud of that brotherhood you have built with those guys at the University of North Carolina. But just a little bit about your background. Most recently, you were a Division II head coach as of last year, and I'm here. I'm very interested in just talking to you about just your transition, just from becoming an elite level high school player. And I skipped a lot of your bio, but elite level high school player. What did you average in high school? It's like 41.
It's 44.
44
44.
points in high school, coming out of the great state of South Carolina, matriculating to the University of North Carolina, becoming one of the best players at the University of South Carolina after he transferred, and playing an extensive professional career and getting into the landscape of coaching. My whole point is just to kind of dive into all of that process for you. I want to know just your journey, man. Talk to me about your high school, just your high school playing days. To be able to average 44 points, you had to be, I know this because I know you, but you had to be an elite level athlete. You had to have this immense work ethic, this ability to just stand up to challenges, because I know people threw all sorts of junk defenses at you to try and stop you from scoring a night in and night out. And I was a little bit of a late bloomer, so I didn't really have that perspective. Tell me about your high school playing days and how you got to the point where you were so good in high school.
Well, Tim, thank you for having me on the show this morning. It's great to be here, and you know as well as I do how fun we enjoy these conversations of talking about basketball. But just to talk about my early on in my career, I didn't play a whole lot. People don't realize that when I didn't start playing varsity basketball until the tail end of my sophomore year, and I had a taste of being cut, and my freshman year not making the varsity team, and ended up playing JV my freshman and sophomore year, and I didn't like the way that felt. The competitor in me drove me to sneaking in my high school gym, climbing on top of the building and going through the windows just to get in and get shots when the gym was locked. And, um, it's those type of things. You're coming back and then working really hard in the summer with a lot of my school coaches, Coach Nimmons, who spent so much time, and we developed a relationship over the years to where we were able to, he was able to actually mold and shape me not only as an athlete, but, I have a basketball mind, and, taught me the work ethic. And, it came into my junior year where I ended up, starting, going from getting cut my freshman year to, playing my junior year and starting and having a really good role on a team that was 30 and one, and ended up having several Division I basketball players on that team. After graduating, those guys graduating and leaving, the large amount of responsibility to score points became something that I had to do in a major role. And I spent the summer lifting weights and, conditioning in myself to be able to play 32-minute game. I knew I was going to be asked to shoulder a bulk load of the scoring. And so I was just training my mind and my body actually to be able to respond to anything that was thrown my way. It was my senior year was one of those years where it was a dream year for me, because I had great teammates that were unselfish, and they sacrificed a whole lot of their scoring and ability to allow me to be able to um, be the player that I was my senior year, and setting screens and putting me in situations where I can score the ball easily and effectively. Those guys did a remarkable job, and I wouldn't have been the player I was without any of those guys.
That's amazing. So I wanted to mess around and just give you an icebreaker for the first question, and I was like, was it the first love at the first dribble, or was it something else? But you answered that question. It was something else. Like, and I think for having a unique journey that you just described for us, is much like myself. Like, basketball wasn't the easiest sport I played growing up. For me, it was something I grew into. You played it every day outside with your your cousins and your friends in the neighborhood, but it was by far the worst sport I had, and it was nothing that I genuinely didn't love it until um, probably at the same age, junior year high school into my sophomore year, starting to like feel like I found a way to have some success, and that little bit of success just kind of nurtured what was already inside of me. So, I mean, going back to your story, after 44 points a game, that is not an easy feat. Now, just for the people who don't know much about your game or haven't followed your history or whatever, how did you score those 44 points? I know for a fact that you were an elite level shooter, but you also had above average athleticism that helped too. Give me some describe some ways that you were really really effective offensively in high school.
Well, I'm going to tell you all summer, and this is interesting point that I try to stress to my sons as well as players that I coach right now. I think you have to play with older, more mature players. I grew up playing basketball in the park. I got roughed up. I got knocked down. Anytime I went to the basket, there was a lot of physical contact that I had to endure playing with those older guys. And they were sending a message to me that, I had to, it was one of those things where I had to go through them to get where I needed to be. And it was one of those things. And I'll tell you this, when you're a young guy and you're trying to make a name for yourself, you try to prove it to those older guys that you're ready. And the way I was able to prove it was, to go there and allow those guys to knock me around and beat me up and still keep coming back. And there was a lot of respect that was gained from them, and it helped my game. So when I got to high school, it was more so those things prepared me because, the physical part of it, I had it. It was one of those things where I was able to get there. And, whenever I got around the basket, I was physical. I was going to get you before you got me, type thing. I learned to shoot because, a lot of playing at the park, your tight rims and things of that nature, you want to take those shots because of the fear that you going in there getting hit.
Yeah,
So you had to
right.
become a good shooter to be able to open that opportunity for you. So, um, those were some of the things that I took into playing against my peers and guys that were my age, was just to be in a situation where I just, take the park mentality to the hardwood.
Absolutely, absolutely. What were some of the early influences for you as you got into your early years of basketball? But looking back as now as a coach, what were some of the early influences for you that helped build your coaching style and give you this mindset to be not only a great coach but a great teacher of the game? What were some of those early influences?
Well, my high school coach, number one, he was a man of a lot of discipline, structure, and preparation. He was a man of class. He wore a suit at every game. So, I was able to see that. And those were things that I saw early on that I said that, whenever I had the opportunity, this is what I want to look like. This is who I want to be like. I've had a lot of great teachers, the late great Coach Smith, Eddie Fogler, and one that kind of gets lost in the shuffle a whole lot is Fletcher Arrett, who spent, a long, long time at Fort Union Military Academy. And, you know, my journey there from high school led me to Fort Union Military Academy, which then propelled me to go to the sign and commit to the University of North Carolina. So it was my journey has always been up and down. I kind of got used to the ebbs and flows of the basketball, and you're going to have them as long as you play and you coach this game. And the resilient and the mental toughness that I've had to develop over the years through play has helped also shape my coaching career.
It's interesting you bring up the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows of just basketball, sport in general. Just this week, we had a unfortunate end to a young NFL football player that with the Dallas Cowboys. Name is escaping me. I apologize about that, but you just brought it up, and I happen to,
Dylan.
yeah. So I happen to be looking at something on TikTok yesterday, and a guy who, former basketball player, professional basketball player like ourselves, who was mentioning that a lot of professional athletes are not happy, and why that is. And he was using some perspective and some of the biblical word and some teachings about it. And one of the things is that we're taught to handle the ups and downs, but we are also put in a situation where our performance defines who we are, and it really doesn't define who we are. And in order for you to compartmentalize and understand that having a bad game or a great game means nothing about the character of the person that you are and shouldn't be carried on or off the court. Unfortunately, that's not how it really is in life. And you mentioned the ebbs and flows of basketball. Success doesn't ride with the only with the wins. Success comes with it when you have defeats, when you have to walk away from situations and not be so happy about it. I remember my first year playing overseas. I had to walk away from a situation and where I felt like I was a failure and didn't have the success that I was accustomed to, and contemplated quitting. And it just didn't, just kind of was lost for several months. And luckily I was able to, friends, some of my former teammates asked me to come play some pickup one night. And I was like, man, nah, I'm not playing. And then they asked me again the next week. And I was like, I'll just go. I hadn't picked up a basketball in 4 months. I was done with it. And then it was at that moment when the ball was back in my hands and I'm on the court playing pickup with my friends, and that I felt like that connection back to the game. But it's hard when you have those ebbs and flows, being able to compartmentalize and walk away from something, or move on from something, from one situation to another new situation, and not drag that stuff with you. Those who can figure that out and be able to do that, man, there's a lot of things going to help them when they transition later in life, when they transition from job to job, or move from one house to the next house or what have you. Being able to compartmentalize and being able to leave things where they are and pick up and move forward. But you mentioned that, and it just kind of reminded me of what I saw yesterday. What are your thoughts on that? Like, handling the ebbs and flows of life in basketball, handling the ebbs and flows of life in sport. Some of the things. How do you help your players handle those incidents, those points of moments? I guess those defining moments.
I would say the biggest thing is, you know, think of the bigger picture. At some point in time, basketball is gonna, be a pass for us. And the things that we're able to learn through the game of basketball, we can apply it in our daily lives. And one of the things that I was able to gain from all that was uh, you know, just how quickly you get yourself back together after you've had one of those down moments, and things didn't kind of work out the way you wanted them to work out, to be able to bounce back and have some elasticity to be able to rebound from disappointment. You know, uh, my first bit of disappointment was, going and signing from at the University of North Carolina, only to later realize that academically I didn't meet the requirements. And that was nobody's fault but my own. I ended up signing and going to play at the university, at Fort Union Military Academy, where it was a very difficult situation because it's a military school. It was the first time I was away from home, so handling all that, the responsibilities of all that, being in a situation where I had nothing but males around me, where, there was no female or no mom intuition and to give me advice. I had to make choices and decisions on my own. Eating food that I wasn't accustomed to eating. I mean, it was just a big change for me. And learning how to navigate that was my first situation to where I was able to handle the disappointment. But going there and then, going to University of North Carolina where you got 14 guys on your team that were Mr. Basketballs in their respective states and trying to find your niche and find out how you can contribute to this team. For me, it was just every day try to get better. Do what the coaches are asking. We live in a society today where, when things don't go away, your first thing you do is you want to run from it. The thing that I learned from basketball is that you can't run from it. You have to, you know, you know, the bull in the eyes and actually, get whatever it is your goal is, get it done. And it may come with some disappointment, it may come with some heartache, and it may come with, some regrets. Through it all, there's a lesson to be learned through it. There's valuable experiences that you can pass on to young men and young student athletes that you come in encounter with. And I think that's, for me, the most invaluable lesson that I got from all this because now I'm being able to impact other lives through my experiences and things that I've achieved or I wasn't so great at.
I think are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. All right. It may have froze up. I'm hoping that it didn't happen because that was a good sound bite just in terms of the when we were playing in our playing days, you were guys transferred. Don't get me wrong, guys transferred, but that was not really a thing that you thought
Hard.
about. You transferred, you end up transferring yourself. But I remember my coaches coming to me when I was in American University as a freshman, sophomore, and just threatening me, and not in a negative way. They were trying to get me to be the better version of myself, and for me to kind of go all in and to buy in and all the rest of that stuff. Saying they're gonna send me to Longwood. It was at the time was a Division II school, and in the middle of Central Virginia. And I was like, man, I don't want to go. Like I'll do whatever I got to do to stay here, coach. Whatever you want me to do something, I'll do it. Like, just please don't do that to me. Don't send me somewhere else. Cause I didn't know starting over was never a thing. You trudged along and you were my parents, man, they made me you had to figure it out. There was no like
Yeah.
quitting. There was none of that stuff. So just the threat of you saying you were gonna send me somewhere else or you didn't want me anymore was like I was disrespecting what was given to me, So the
We
opportunities that
we
came
looked
by.
at it as we did look at it back in the day as a source of quitting, whereas today, the kids today look at it as an opportunity. And, we were built and we were groomed by high school coaches and guys that we were brought up with that we don't run from anything. We don't, when things get hard, you just knuckle up and you embrace the challenge.
Right, right, it works both ways, and it is a mindset too. It is a mindset. Like these kids, like you said, they look at it as an opportunity. But you're talking about this video game generation. I call it the video game generation. When we play video games, we didn't get to we tried to hit the pause button, and then we want to restart where we finished. We didn't rip the plug out the wall, throw the game out. We didn't do all that. They wanted to start over all the way. It's like the crash out generation, man. They crash out, and it's like they want to complete change it, but that's not necessarily how we were raised, and it was a hard decision to make those changes, and to make those small pivots that could continue to help you escalate and elevate your game. Um, Moving on to the couple other things, like question I have for you, walking your path from player to head coach. You mentioned people who were pivotal. What are some pivotal situations? And you did mention one being that your academic situation that kind of held you back from matriculating from your senior year and of high school to University of North Carolina, and had to go the route of the prep school at Fork Union Military Academy. And for those who don't know about Fork Union Military Academy, that's the Oak Hill of yesteryear. G's, the Montverdes. That was the best of the best. Went to the Fork Union Military Academy. What are some pivotal moments in your playing career that helped shape who you are today?
Attending the University of North Carolina would probably be the first one that I had to deal with. Like I said earlier, 14 guys that were on that team were Mr. Basketballs in their respective states. And I would remember listening to one of the commentators. I think it was Dick Vitale at the time, said that North Carolina at that time had the number one and two best teams in the country with their first and second unit. And it went on like that for 2 years. And I got to the point where playing time was scarce. It was hard to come by. And I got a little homesick. And I wanted to be back in front of, fans that supported me, family that supported me. I had that conversation with Coach Smith. And eventually, the decision was made by me to leave and go back home and finish my career. And, it's almost, it was a going back was it was North Carolina all over again because you ran the same plays. Your practice was pretty much the same. The format of practice, the practice plans, and what you did, it was so similar to it made the adjustment for me a lot easier. And all I had to do was focus and concentrate on just playing basketball. It was an easy transition for me, but that would probably be the most difficult thing that I had to do as a player. But there, again, my career, and I'll say this, I've had the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows, and even with, having to go to Fork Union to going to North Carolina and not having a chance to play, then being at South Carolina and having an opportunity to be an All-American there and help the school win their first ever SEC championship in any sport. And be as ranked as high as number 6 in the country was a great opportunity. And, and then to get that call and say, hey, there's opportunity for you to possibly get drafted in the NBA. And as a kid and as a player, that's every young man's dream to have that opportunity to hear their name call on draft night. And going through that
Absolutely.
process and to not have your name called was another down time in my career. And, then you bounce back from that. So my life has been a lot of ups and downs in terms of the game of basketball. And now I'm experiencing some of those same ebbs and flows in life and when it comes to career opportunities.
That you brought up that point of not having your name called on draft night, and having that opportunity and that we all dream of. Whatever sport we play, growing up, football was probably my first love, and I just dreamed about playing in NFL, and then kind of changed my pathway. Changed basketball became my primary sport, but having people talk about the possibility of those things happening, your name being called on draft night, it's kind of like life comes full circle. Like you almost realize your dream is right in the midst of your hand, and you reach out to grab it, and it just is not there. And so to be able to naturally pivot, the pivot for all of us was, hey, I'm gonna go play professionally overseas, and I'm gonna make a living
Yeah.
playing professionally overseas. And it's funny because I'm a referee in football just to do some stuff, right? Try and get in some shape, lose some weight. And the young kids always ask me like, "Hey, Mr. Rep, how tall are you?" I tell them 6'7". They were like, "Oh man, did you play ball?" I said, "I played basketball." And they were like, "Oh," and when I mentioned that I played professionally, and they were like, "In the NBA?" I'm like, "Nah, man, I played overseas." And it's the disappointment in their faces when I tell them I played overseas. I'm like looking at these, I'm like, they have no idea the gauntlet that
Yeah.
exists across that water. Just that alone, that you went over there and the people we met, we played with, played against, it's like, man, every one of us was on that same. It's like not even like a dream derailed. We were still living the dream because overseas they treated us like we were in the NBA. That we were their NBA superstars at that point in time. There was no worldwide broadcast of NBA games and things of that nature. We were that right. So it's funny you mentioned that, but that pivot, like it's constantly that going back to the ebbs and flows of basketball. You have to have that mindset to be able to adjust and move forward quickly, responsively. And I think a lot of that comes out of how you're coached, who you're coached by, and it leads to us building our own coaching philosophies to this day, like that next play mentality, right? You got to make the next
Yes.
play. Don't worry about the last thing. Move on to the next thing as quickly as possible. Get over that hurdle of that adversity, because on the other side of that is some success. It might be might not be the ultimate success, but there's some success waiting for you once you navigate this the challenge, right? When you got
And it may not happen right away.
No, no, absolutely. And so when that happened with you had to pivot, right? Overseas. What was that experience like for you?
Again, tough. I mean, I'm going away from home, in an unfamiliar place. I am getting used to a new language, new culture,
Every year.
new friends every year, new coaching styles, new coaching philosophies, just the whole conglomerate of you being in the situation where you have to accept change and adjust to change. And going over there, and you mentioned earlier about being those guys NBA, they looked up to you, and you were expected to come in and make an impact on that team and in that community. It was heartwarming, but at the same time, it was very difficult to know that,
It's a whole
you
nother,
meant
nother
something.
level of mental toughness. A whole nother level of mental toughness. Like
Yes.
we talked about mental toughness with dealing with the stuff that goes on and securing playing time in your university on your basketball team and having a significant role. But when you went over there, it was some of them places were cutthroat, meaning that if you didn't perform 2 games in a row, they were flying somebody else in. They'd be waiting in the hotel for you when you got back from the game. The level of mental
Yeah, it
toughness
was it
that you
was
needed to
tough.
navigate, that was kind of crazy. It was crazy at
It
times.
was tough. It was tough. Yeah, it was tough. And I laugh at it, and I still remain friends just with guys that I played with or either played against, and we laugh and joke about some of the stuff that we had to endure during our time over there. We would come in. I've had a teammate that I had gotten used to and really bonded with, and he didn't rebound the basketball enough. We come to the airport and his replacement is getting off the plane when we're coming from, and he's on the bus with us riding back to our respective city, because we were in Malaga
Right.
where we would catch Spain. So it was like we would have a situation where his replacement was riding back on the bus with us, coming back from a road trip to replace him. And he's on the bus with us, and I'm sitting here like, this is rough.
Weird, man.
It's
It's
rough.
like I mean, I was in a situation where I was the guy replacing somebody. And I just remember we were all just hanging out. Like we were all good friends. Like we all had a common bond because we were the international guys, the American guys. So, you sit around and you chop it up and talk about your college experiences and so on and so forth. But we all knew we were there trying to just make money and secure a role spot for ourselves and hopefully play well enough that leads to a situation again the next year. Because it wasn't it was rare that you heard of a guy that got multi-year contracts back then. It was a year-to-year contract. You know, you'd be excited if the team that you played on the previous year would offer you a contract again the next year. So you just didn't understand what was going to happen. It was like a meat market. It was just a meat market. So
Yeah.
if you had a stint where you were in a slump, that slump could lead you right on out of that situation real quick, real quick. It's
And
amazing that we need to go back and talk about that stuff. When you think about it, the vast experiences it's just wild.
yeah, you can be playing well. You could be scoring the ball, but if your team is losing, they're still going to blame it on the
It's your
Americans.
fault.
Your fault. You should have passed more. I'm
Yeah,
averaging 25, 26.
yeah, yeah,
Well, we need more assists out of you. So you stop shooting as much and you try to be a facilitator. And they say, well, now you're not scoring enough.
yeah.
So it's one of those things, you
I
had
remember
to,
when I was in Spain, I remember a situation where I was playing slave ball. I was averaging like 28, 10. I'm doing everything. And the money stopped coming in. They stopped paying me for like 2 months. Like the checks didn't hit the account. So I'm like, I'm out there every day doing doing the work. And I just started to I was a young hothead, so I started playing games. Okay, you gonna play with my money? All right, we gonna play these games. I'm out there in practice, doing my thing in practice, looking like I'm supposed to look. Game come around, I ain't shoot the ball. Shoot the ball 2 times in the game. One of them was because they dropped the ball off to me. I had to shoot the layup, but I was not scoring. For 2 games, I think I averaged like 4 points a game. And next thing you know, I'm in a meeting in the president's office. They got the general manager, their coach in there. They got my agent on the phone. And agents were different back then. Agents didn't show up in your face and went around. You would hear from them suckers twice a year, maybe, if you were lucky. And so
yeah.
agents on the phone was like, they're saying that you're not playing. And I'm like, well, I haven't gotten paid in the last 2 months. And he's like, they said they're gonna cut you if if you don't play. And I was like, they gotta pay me. And I played chicken with the management, and then all of a sudden the money started hitting my account the next week. I went out the third game, I was back hitting 20, and they were all happy. But you don't know how, when I look back on it, I was like this close to having sent my ass home because I was no longer doing what
Yeah.
I was doing, and we weren't winning games. And I think those 3 games, or those 2 games that happened, I think we lost, and it cost us a playoff spot at the end of the year. But they played around with the money, and they, as my daughter likes to say, they fudded around and found out. So that's what happened. The young hotheads, right? It's wild.
Right.
Moving back into some of your coaching stuff, right? So like you had a variety of coaches, and for those of you who are listening, when Larry refers to Coach Smith, he's talking about the legendary coach Dean Smith of the University of North Carolina, highly regarded as one of the best college basketball coaches of all time and one of the finest human beings to coach the game of all time. You've had some opportunities to be coached by some legendary people, Eddie Fogler, you mentioned, right? So like, what are things that you were able to take from them? And I know I've heard other North Carolina legends speak on the lessons that they learned from Coach Smith, but what were some things that you took from them that you put into your repertoire as a coach, and even kind of grew it and made it something bigger and better than what it was for you then?
I would have to start off by saying the preparation. Coach Smith when it came to preparation for practice and preparation for games, I don't think there's anyone that did it better. But the other thing is treating the last person on the bench just like he treated the star player or the guy who was averaging the most points on our team. He had always had time to talk to all his players. There was very little belittling in terms of your abilities to be able to perform. It was always building you up and expressing to you how you can get better and grow as a player and as a person. And those things were things that are very evident in my coaching style. But I also take some of my lessons from Coach Fogler as well. Very stern, very stoic at times, but those things are things that, in my eyes, you have to have as a coach in order for you to be successful, because you can't, especially in this day and age where there are so many influences, you have to remain in control of what's going on in the program. And I'm not saying that there's some giving in that as well, in terms of, making sure that the players know that you care about them and you're doing what is in best interest for him or her at that time, and you're gonna continue to push them and motivate them in a way that they probably haven't been motivated and pushed before. And that's that's one of those things where you look at and you just hope that the 19-year-old kid that's sitting across the desk from you understands that you and trusts you to the fact that they understand that you're trying to get the best out of them and get them where they want to go. So those are some of the things that I've taken from the coaches that I've had. But just like I said, the X's and O's are big in terms of it, but Coach Smith and Coach Fogler were very, very big in, getting to know the player and making sure that player understands that he's cared for. It comes out in a multitude of ways now. Everybody says tough love, discipline is love. And I think the discipline that I was shown at the University of North Carolina, University of South Carolina helped prepare me for my coaching career.
You've had an extensive coaching background obviously from the high school ranks to the collegiate ranks, now back to the high school ranks, but you also spent several years on the youth basketball circuit. I want to segue there because the conversation is about our experiences with the game, looking back on it with how good the game's been to us individually, but also leaving the game in a great place. We've been doing this now for, like I said, 20, 25 years, coaching and developing kids, training kids. You have an extensive background in basketball training as well and player development. When you look at the youth basketball genre, what are some things that stand out to you, both good and bad? I preface that with saying that in my estimation, I think our game has grown stale over the last several years. And part of being on this podcast is challenging my guests to come up with some creative ways to continue to grow the game and to expand and expound on the things that we had, right? So when you look at that, what are some things that you see, and what are some things that you think are positive and negative in that space?
I'll go back to, my coaching career when I first started. And even as a player, we took part in a lot of cone drills, if I may say. You know, I've never seen a cone slide their feet or move their hands. And I think, people that haven't had the experience of playing the game understand what that would do to you as a player if you're not understanding the why you're doing something. And I think that's the most important facet of, teaching, understanding the why. Don't spend, 45 minutes doing cone drills because that may be a good warm up, but it doesn't fully transfer to the game and game like situation. I'll do a lot of live body stuff right now. When it comes to defense and offense, situational stuff where, 2-on-1 decision making, where you're going to have to use a skill, a bounce pass or a live pass. And you may not be able to throw that chest pass through the arms of 5 defenders that are sitting in the lane on you. You got to be creative in how you utilize your skills. Then, you got to use your pivots, get the 2 feet and pivot back and find the open man. Those type things are things that I incorporate more in coaching, whereas, when I was early on in my career, it was just a lot of dummy offense and, 5-on-5, but it wasn't like the 1-on-2 and, 2-on-3 disadvantage stuff to teach situationals and teach them skill sets and how to use their skill sets in certain situations. It's amazing the skill level of basketball right now. And, you look at guys like Steph Curry and the things that they do. I watch some of his training sessions, and you talk about reaction times where he put the lights on the wall, and while he's handling the ball, he's got to take his offhand off the ball and touch different lights as they light up. That mind part of it and the reaction time is something that transfers to the game for him. And you know albeit we don't have the technology and the resources that Steph Curry has,
Right,
I
right,
think you can use those certain things to help better, the skill level and the ability to play the game at a high level for high school and college players. And I use a lot of those tactics now. Footwork is something that I spent an extensive amount of time on without the ball. I use tennis balls. I use, the reaction balls where you don't know which way they're going to bounce and things of that nature. I use the basketball and certain things to try to teach, the footwork and the reaction time for players. I think if you can do that and you can be consistent at it, it's going to increase your ability to be able to play a game at a high level because not only are you using your athleticism, now you're using your decision making and your mind to be able to help offset some of the things that you might have some things, some shortcomings in.
right. I would agree. There's a myriad of ways to develop players and get them to be a better developed, more fully developed. I think one of the things is missing for sure is that IQ piece of it is just a understanding of why the rhyme and reason of why you're doing certain things. Now, I'll go back. You mentioned the cones. I used cones a ton years ago, but it was teach dribbling skills, certain dribbling skills, and then we would talk about constantly doing this like 10-minute segment of dribbling through cones about the need to understand that you have this skill set. Now you have the skill set, right? But you need to understand that you don't need every one of these skills in any particular one segment. I liken it to you see the kid out there that has been training on cones all the time that's doing 6 different dribble moves just to get to the basket. And I tell the kids all the time, I would like, listen, your job is to pick the one that works best in that moment. You have them all. You have a tool belt on. Pick the right tool, and then you got to go. So utilizing that skill set, like teaching you giving you a bag of skills is your job to understand what skill is needed or what tool is needed in that particular situation and then using it and going. And I don't think enough coaches are telling or utilizing that type of information and giving it to the kids so that they understand that I don't need all of this. I have it, but I really only need to know which one I need to use in any particular situation that's going to allow me to free myself up because quite frankly, all of our jobs as an offensive player, I don't care if you're a 44-point scorer in high school or 20-point scorer in high school or 10-point scorer in high school, whatever it is, all of our jobs is to create offensive advantages for ourselves. And for ourselves means for the team, right? So maybe you, Larry, as a 44-point scorer and the way that you're capable of putting the ball on the hole, your offensive advantages are much wider than the next person's, right? So maybe they have a more narrow scope to work with. But your job is to, if I could create two people to play the ball to guard what one, you're creating an opening for someone else, and you've done your job. But your job is to utilize the skills that you have with those tools to create that opportunity. And that opportunity doesn't have to be created every time the ball touches your hand. I think that's one of the things that's missing as well.
Let's see, one of the things I'm gonna go back, and I was taught at an early age from my high school coach, if you need more than 3 dribbles to get a shot off, you're not very good offensively. Like, if you can catch the ball and you can square up and you can create that advantage through triple threat, through a jab step, all you want the defense to do is bite one way or another, and then you got to be able to get down to that area, and either you're into a pull up or you're getting all the way to the basket. And the game is that, and people don't realize, like when I played high school basketball, they asked me how did I score 44 points a game. And I know it's probably sounds, you know, I don't want to sound like it's an easy feat, but I went to the line 21 times a game,
Damn.
and I shot 88% from the free throw lines. Getting to the line, and that goes back to me playing with older guys. I knew how to draw fouls, and I think that's why I admire guys like Steph Curry, and because they play the game with their mind and not just the athleticism. Shea Alexander, SGA. James Harden is another one that does a great job of drawing fouls. But the one thing that all those guys have in common, they're not overly quick and explosive until they get to the rim. What they do is they do an unbelievable job of shooting the basketball, which gives you all kind of advantages because at least little head and shoulder fake, they got a bite on it. And that gives you the defense to have to give you an angle to be able to get where you want it. Now you got to pick which way you're going. And it's almost like playing a video game. You want to manipulate the defense to get them to think you're doing this, and then you're taking advantage of something going another way. So, I learned that at an early age, and I was able to utilize that as a college athlete and as a pro. Even as a pro, I didn't use a whole lot of ball handling stuff. I didn't use, you know, dribble the ball 10, 15 times to get a shot. I just didn't believe that I needed to do that. I just felt that if I can get an angle on you, I was going to score. I was strong enough. I was athletic enough and I got the ball well enough to be able to put it in the hole from anywhere.
Yep,
So
I would agree.
that's in a nutshell.
Do you think we're overvaluing or undervaluing exposure over fundamentals?
Yes, I do.
And do you
And I
think
think
there's a way for that cat? Can we get the cats back in the bag? Because the cat's out the bag. And part of it now it was exposure, but now you're talking about with the emergence of name, image, and likeness, revenue sharing, all of those things that happen in the collegiate game. Can we get the cat back in the bag where we can shift that focus, or is it are we gone from that?
I think it's going to be difficult to do that now because of so many entities that's involved in this whole NIL piece. I do think that there's a need for it. The overseas game they had it a long time ago. They develop skills. They have basketball academies where these young kids
Right.
learn how to use those skill sets. That's with the emergence of guys like, Gianni the Ginobili's and the Tony Parkers. These guys are extremely skilled, not very, the Wimbies, the Luka Doncics. These guys are unbelievably skilled, and they mastered those skill sets, and they don't sway away from it or shy away from, playing the game with their mind. And we in the States, we rely so much on athleticism. We put such a highlight or a spotlight on athleticism and size till they take away the things that really will will impact winning. Like, I like tough kids. I like kids that compete. I like kids that, that are skilled. I like kids that can defend. And at the college level, that is not looked at too much anymore. It's about the metrics. And what happens is, kids, they see that, and you have them to where they look at it and they marvel over the highlights, the dunks, the no look passes, the fadeaway jump shot. And it's more than one way to skin a cat, but I just don't think that ability lies in the eyes of all the players out there. You just got to find what your strong suits are, and you got to be able to display it at a high level.
Going back to that exposure, um, the issue of chasing exposure over chasing the fundamentals. I know when I grew up, I played on one AAU team. That was my senior year. I played on one AAU team. You had to be the best team in your region to advance to the national tournament. And on my last podcast, Katie talked about some of the stuff where she grew up playing. My wife, Katie, was on the pod talking about the same thing where she played on the AAU team for a couple of years. You had to be the best team in your region to advance to the national tournament. And when you got to the national tournament, there was only 30 teams there. And it's gotten to the point now where I don't even know if there's like a dozen national tournaments. You got the shoe circuit national tournaments. You've got these other
Grassroots.
off-brand national tournaments, and you know, at what point in time how much is that adding a detractor, right? Because all of these tournament directors, and I'm not knocking anybody, get it how you got to get it, but they're making a ton of money off of these kids and families traveling around playing basketball every single weekend. But that every single weekend playing style tournament basketball is, to me, is a distractor. You're spending more time traveling and staying in hotels and spending up all your savings that you have for the summer as opposed to putting time in the gym. That is something to me that is a detractor. Do you think the chasing the exposure, the highlight culture, the social media prominence, all of this stuff is something that is eating away at the American basketball system? Because you're right. When you look at from an NBA perspective, the top players in the world aren't from here. So, obviously, you still have the LeBrons and the Stephs, but the top 5 or 6 are international guys. And how do we fix that? Or can it be fixed? Or are we just chasing highlights here in the American basketball system that we're never going to get back?
Well, I think the first thing is probably, putting more of emphasis on the skill set of basketball, recruiting kids that are. I think there's every coach has a style, a certain style that they look for, whether it's Jim Boeheim with the metrics. Those guys got to be 6'7", 6'8", and long and athletic. Nolan Richardson, who coached athletes, and guys that were skilled and that were tough and nasty, and that fit their style of play. We definitely got to get back to the basic skills of the game. And I watch AAU and travel ball a lot during the summer, and the quality of coaching, I think, hurts the kids as well, because everybody wants their kid to play, and the exposure part of it till they're just putting kids on teams, and they're just, they're traveling around and just like you say, spending all their hard work, hard earned money on basically just, rec basketball is what it looks like in a lot of senses. But finding a program that's gonna incorporate skill and fundamentals, that's going to incorporate the strength and conditioning component that those kids need to play at the next level, I think is so important. And that's the only way we're going to get back to that is probably to cut back on the amount of play and games that these kids play during the year. I see a lot of injuries and a lot of young players in terms of the NBA just graduating and getting a career started, and they're tearing ACLs, and they're getting hurt. And I think it's from and I'm no doctor and things of that nature, but I think it's from so much play and stress that they put on their bodies through the time that they're coming up. And I think that's something that has to be monitored. I think it's something that needs to, that needs to be looked at a little bit more in terms of at the higher levels, and see can we find a common ground to where we keep these injuries at a minimum, and we develop these kids instead of just playing basketball.
I think you hit the nail on the head, and it was my next question to you was going to be if you had the magic wand and you could rebuild youth basketball from the ground up, what would it be? And that's the change. I think that we need to regulate. There needs to be some sort of sports regulatory. 'Cause you think about when we played overseas, each country had some sort of regulatory body over their sports. Those kids didn't play a ton of games. They may have extracted kids from the general population and said, "Oh, he has the qualities to be a great soccer player or basketball player," and they put him in those academies. But it was about building and not just about playing games. And that's I think we need to have some sort of regulatory body outside of it. Can't be like the NCAA. It's got to be something that starts in the youth, and it needs to be. It's going to be tough because how do you regulate all these programs in 50 states that that's hard, but you got to limit the number of playing. You got to be able to give more access to gyms to some of these kids so that they are being able to be built and taught the right way. It's not all about playing. It's about learning how to play and minimizing. I know we did a thing, Katie and I, when AZ got to high school, and she suffered from her stuff, right? So like, but we tried not to overplay. We would even her training changed. We just said, okay, this is a mechanical technical training. We're training technique, mechanics. We're not trying the pounding. We're taking the pounding out of it, but we're just going to work on the fundamentals of your mechanics, right? But even stuff like that, there's value in the non-playing and working on certain things where you can create muscle memory, teach people how to run correctly, teach people how to move properly, so that they can avoid some of these situations. But nothing's an exact science. It isn't an exact science, but I do think that we need to start pulling back in one regard or another, because otherwise it's just going to continue to go. It's a spiral. It's a downward spiral from here, in my opinion. Let's see. Moving on. Hard question, Coach. How do you get your parents? How do you get your parents and players to buy into that mindset? Right? Because if you got your group of kids, right? And you're on a summer circuit or whatever it is you're coaching in high school, and we're going to do this, and it's completely different than what the other teams are doing, the other programs are doing. How do you get them to buy in? I think that's one of the hardest things to do, is to develop that trust and buy-in, because they're always looking at social media. They're looking at the other one, what the neighbors are doing, trying to keep up with the Joneses. And when the Joneses are out traveling around playing all the time, and you're saying, nope, we don't need to do that. How do you get them to trust that?
Difficult. That's a difficult job because everybody, I tell parents at the beginning of the year, you're concerned with one player, I'm concerned with 13. And I want to get all 13 of them an opportunity to play college basketball at the next level, or either pro basketball, whatever level that's the next level that they'll see. My job is to prepare them, and I'm going to do whatever's in my power. My track record is proven to where I've been able to put kids in school, and it's been documented that if you do it this way, long before I started coaching, the things that we're doing has been proven that it works. Whether it's, Coach Smith and the number of players that he's put in the NBA, and guys that have extended their careers overseas. These are some of the things that I take with me, and I share with the kids that I'm working with now to try to help them reach their final destination in terms of athletics. And but meeting and constant, assuring that, hey, I'm doing this for the betterment of your son or daughter and this team, and I need you to trust and believe. Now, what I think needs to be done, parents want to be involved, and as a coach, you can involve them to a certain degree. They want to feel like, hey, they have some input. This is my child, but they don't have the understanding of how to get there. A lot of them, I won't say all of them, but they don't have the understanding on how to get their kids to the next level. And it's up to us as coaches to try to educate them as well, to share with them the information that needs to be um, re passed along to make sure that these kids get to the things that they need. And I won't say that there's a blueprint out there that we can all use for to get our kids to the next level or to get that exposure, but there's some things that we can do out there that's going to increase their chances.
Just to have the willingness of coaches buy-in probably has to come first. coaches buy in to be able to change what's been going on that's not working. The more people realizing that would be the first step. And if we get the coaches to buy in, I think everybody else naturally has to do what the coaches are offering. Because if no one's offering to do more, doing anything extra, then this is what we have to work with, right? But
Yeah.
that's the biggest issue we have is trying to get everybody to buy into it. Couple more questions for you. I know we've been doing this for a little while, but I want to ask you a couple things. When you look back on your career, playing, coaching, what are you most proud of? What are the two most proud of things? I'll give you two. There you go. That should be easy for you. That's a lob. It's a lob.
National championship is definitely one that I'm most proud of, and then going to a program that was rebuilding and being an integral part of the turnaround and success of that program was a another one. But I'm gonna even go and say another highlight was having the ability to be able to coach my sons at the high school and the college level has been something that has been fun and challenging at times. But to be able to see their journey and be on that journey with them, I know you've had a chance to experience the same
Yeah.
with AZ, and I've been able to watch that from afar. But to have that opportunity to be able to share that journey and help them, matriculate through the process of becoming a high school athlete to a college athlete and hopefully to a professional career. So, those three things are probably, I know you said two, but I couldn't leave my sons out because that
No, that,
journey
that
has
was a
been
lob I threw you.
unbelievable.
The Suns was a lob I threw you. That was it. Especially since that how we grew up. Like my dad was around, but he wasn't really involved because of whatever was going on between him and my mom was super volatile. I know the same thing was going on with you. Like it just we were raised by women, and
Mhm.
being able to be a representative father has been for my coaching career has been the most rewarding thing, and it's probably the one thing I look back on as the most proudest thing I've done is that I still coach high school basketball. I'm not a head coach anymore. I'm an assistant coach on AZ's high school team with a good friend of mine, but it allows me to still be dad. And I'm here right now in Connecticut because UConn plays Florida State today. I'm here to watch her play, and we have practice number 2 that just got done. Yep, just finished. Our practice number 2 just finished, and I'm here. So that it's allowed me to prioritize my being present for my kids that in a way that wasn't the same for me when I grew up. And so and I got a lot of flack from that stuff when I was a head coach coaching in the DC area. A lot of my parents didn't understand that, and they kind of was irritated by that. I was like running out of practice 5 minutes early, so because I got to go to my daughter's practice, or I got to go to my son's practice, and they just didn't understand it. But we spend, like I said, 25 years coaching other people's kids, and having that moment to coach your own and to be there for your own and represent for your own is a blessing that most of us don't get in this game. You miss out on so
Well,
much.
I consider I consider, me and Deion Sanders are probably the only 2 coaches that had an opportunity to coach our kids at the high school and the college level. He is, of course, on a higher level, but I'm sure he shares some of the same sentiments and in terms of just the relationship, being able to be a part of that journey and share that with them is something that you'll never forget as a parent. I'm sure they'll never forget as kids and children, but that whole situation, the rides back from games, and I used to kid around with some of my players, and they would be like, "Oh, Coach, you're so hard on the boys. Like, I don't ever want you guys to look at my sons as they're playing or they're doing this because they didn't earn it. I want you to know that they earned everything that they've gotten, and it probably came at a higher price than what you're paying right now."
Yep,
Because it's like I
100%.
say, you have the long rides, car rides home and, where, they're not too happy with you and their playing time because you may upset them, or either you got on them about something that they didn't do, and that's what people didn't see, and, but it made our relationship better, and just like I said, that journey has been something that, I'll always remember and cherish for the rest of my life because I didn't have that from my own father, and that's something that, as a man, we want in our lives. Like we want to be you know, to seek validation from our fathers and things of that nature. To have that opportunity and share that, and for them to seek the validation from me and on this journey. I mean, it's been great.
Yeah, I would agree with that, man. It's just it just and the value and validation they're getting out of it and we'll have out of it, it's going to be mind blowing for them to be able to conquer challenges that they have. They have the support of their father. Obviously, mom is important as well, but just from us, how we grew up, having that support is going to be tremendous. So, one more for you. What advice do you have for the next generation of coaches? Not that we're going anywhere, but what new coaches getting into this thing, what advice do you have?
Be patient. Try to build relationships. And when I say relationships, let those late relationships be um, genuine. There's a lot of ingenuine in college basketball. Well, not in just college, but just basketball because of the NIL, and everybody's trying to, tag onto a shirt tail. Just
Transactional relationships.
support. That's exactly transactional relationships. And if we can get back to having those really sound relationships and developing long lasting friendships and relationships, because they're going to go through a lot. They're going to go through a whole lot more than what we went through because of how basketball and sports are actually looked at these days. So those relationships, the time commitment, you can't cheat the grind. I mean,
No,
it's
no.
what you put into it is what you're gonna get out of it. And I would say those are probably the three things that I would say would we need to get back to.
I have a soundbite just because you brought that up just now. I have a soundbite to play you, and it's exactly what you're saying is that those relationships are tougher because of all the extenuating circumstances, the money that's involved, and how, when we played, the last pure level of basketball was college basketball. When we got to pros, you knew it was business. You could feel it. It was just different, and nothing was really the same. But that's now hit college basketball. And here's a soundbite from none other than, and I'm gonna have to see if I could post this in on the video, but from Danny Hurley yesterday, talking about dealing with his players when they're not performing up to par, up to his standard. So check it out. See if I can get this to play. Hold on here.
What is that? Too much is given, much is expected. We invest a lot in these players to come out and perform to their absolute maximum and give everything they got. I mean, these players are very well resourced. I think they owe it to the university. They owe it to each other. They owe it to the coaching staff. They owe it to the fan base. They owe it to the donors. They owe it to a lot of people to go out and play on game night and practice every day to the absolute max for all the resources that are invested in them. That should be every night in every practice. A player should show up and play to the level of effort that they played with tonight. That's not a one-off. If they can't provide that, I'm going to get their ass out of the game.
So this is what we're, this is a business. You're an 18-year-old walking into a business. And if you haven't been taught to be able to deal with some of these things or prioritize your health, your wellness, your mental space, this is what you're walking into. You're walking to the people who are thinking like, man, we paid you this much money or we're giving you this much money and you owe us this. And I think that's a dangerous mentality to have right now in the game of basketball. Obviously, like I just said, college basketball was the last pure level of basketball that we played that no longer exists. That college basketball is no longer pure. That's long gone, you know. So just thought I'd throw that out there for you guys. I saw that earlier today, and I was like, man, that's a great topic to have to listen to.
Yeah, it was. It was. And Danny Hurley's an old school coach. He's coached by his dad at St. Anthony's. So he has that fire. And he has that mentality that, hey, it's either my way or the highway. And it's not many of those coaches left. There's a few that are still out there. And partly because, and I know this is probably gonna have to be another session, but universities and they put so much emphasis on winning now to the part of developing a program and getting kids in and have them for 3 or 4 or 5 years. So if you're not performing as a coach, you got to find the next best thing. because your job is on the line. You got a family to support, and it's difficult. So it makes that job, that much harder for him to. I'm a big fan of what he's doing and how he's teaching the game and the discipline his kids play with and those things. And I think it needs to be more of that and hold these kids accountable and not be afraid of them walking out because he's your best player. Has to be something that we have to get uh, back at the forefront of college basketball.
Agreed, 100%. Bonus, two things: favorite arena to play in, toughest loss. And third, your favorite drill.
My God. Man, that's three tough ones. I would say the toughest arena was probably it's got to be a tie between Rupp and Cameron.
Hold on. Hold up. You still there? What was it? You said Rupp and who?
Rupp and Cameron's got to be the toughest two places.
Okay.
I would say, and you said the toughest drill. I love the Kobe drill.
Okay.
Toughest loss got to be Coppin State. It's Coppin State in the first round of the NCAA tournament my senior year. They took it to us. They were the better team that night. It's one that I got to live with for the rest of my life. Not proud of that
can't
one.
get it back. Yeah, can't get it back.
Can't get it back. And then the drill
All right, bro.
is the drill is the Kobe Bryant drill where you line up the guys on the baseline and you got to guard everyone to half court and roll the ball back.
Yes.
And you just got to keep guarding. I think that teaches it's a conditioning drill, but it's also a competition drill, but it's also an offensive drill, but it's also a defensive drill. I think you get a lot from that drill, and we do it every single day because I want to see who's engaged, who wants to play defense, and how much pride you take in that part of the game.
Yeah, I love that drill. I had to remove it from my practices because I was killing people. They was wearing them out. They was wearing them out, man. But look, this has been a pleasure, man. As usual, we chop it up. We always talk the game. Have fun with it. I appreciate you taking the time out to come on the show, give people some insight, let people know a little bit about your background, your history, because they start to forget about who we are, who we were. But anyway, the whole premise of this is to try and help continue to build the game up, leave it in a better place than when we found it. And I think we did just that with this podcast. So hopefully we inspire some young people out there who are coaching, inspire some young players to continue to get in the gym and develop. And that's a win-win.
Sounds good, my man. Thanks for having me on.
Appreciate you, bro.
Yes, sir.
All right.